Hi everybody, my name is Courtney and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be doing my monthly wrap up for the month of April. I feel like April went by so quickly. I can't believe it's over. And I got some good reading done. Not great, but good enough. And it was also the Magical Readathon in April, so I had some prompts to complete for that. I also participated in the Magical Readathon photo prompts challenges, which was a lot of fun. So I did a whole month on my Instagram of following those prompts. It was great inspiration. I definitely needed that, but it was a lot of fun. So without further ado, let's get into the manga and then we can get into what books I read. So the manga did not complete any challenges for me. Personally, I wanted to read books, use my books for prompts, and then just read manga in between stuff. So the first thing I read was 2 volumes of Haikyuu. I have volume 26 and 27, and this is just continuing reading Haikyuu, waiting for the movie to come out, which I think is coming out at the end of May, and I am just starting in on the second match of the tournament, so I'm getting up to season 4 of the anime, so I need to read that, and then I need to read ahead for the movie so I'm not, spoiled during the movie. But yeah, Haikyuu volleyball anime, volleyball manga. Obviously I've been reading the manga. It's so good. It's one of my favorites. Definitely one of the best sports anime out there. And I just fall in love with every volume. And I always love when there's like a little callback to a scene that happened in like volume 1 or volume 2, because you can just see how much the artist has grown as well. I love seeing that when you're reading a long series like this. But yeah, this was a good time. Seeing that when you're reading a long series like this. But yeah, this was a good time. A little bit less of a good time, I was also reading Kami-sama Kiss volumes 16 and 17. I have a plan to basically read 2 volumes a month to get through this series. I haven't been loving it as much as I did when I originally read it as like a younger teen. Well, older teen. Yeah, I read it as an older teen. Younger person, older teen. It's good. I give it like a 3 out of 5 stars, but it just doesn't hold up as well when I remembered it. Also, this is like one of my favorite arcs and I'm just like slogging through it. But basically, Kami-sama Kiss is a paranormal fantasy romance. Basically, our main character, Nanami, comes across this god. She becomes standing god for the shrine, and there she meets a colorful cast of these spirit and yokai. Of course, the main yokai ends up being someone she starts to fall in love with, and it brings up like this whole issue of like gods and yokai and monsters, like, can they fall in love? Can they be in love with humans? That kind of thing. It's good. It just doesn't hold up quite as much as some of my other favorite series do. And then the last manga I read in April was Witch Hat Kitchen Volume 3. This is a spin-off of the Witch Hat Atelier or Altair series. And basically this is like the soft, cozy, fun kind of filler episodes in between the main series. It's like it says, it's kitchen. So they're cooking, they're foraging, they're using fun ingredients. And of course, because this is set in a magical world where there are witches, there are magical ingredients that they're using, magical techniques, and it's so fun to watch. It is so sweet. If you love the original series, definitely pick up this because it's a really great reprieve. But that does it for manga. So first I will cover what I read for the Magical Readathon. I set out a TBR and I did complete it. For one of my challenges, I had to roll a dice, basically get a number and read a book with a title in that number. For that, I got the number 2, so I picked up a book with a title that had 2 words. So I picked up Artificial Condition by Martha Wells. For another prompt, I had to pick 3 titles and again, like roll my fate kind of thing, see what book was picked for me. And for that, I got The Time I Got Drunk and Slayed a Demon. And then for my final prompt, I had to read a book with a key or a lock or a door on it. So I read Beyond the Black Door. There's a keyhole, there's a key on the back. So this is what I set out to read, and I did complete everything. So the first book I read for the readathon was Beyond the Black Door by A.M. Strickland. I've been wanting to read this forever because it's kind of like one of those notable first Aro Ace books. I would say it leans more Ace, but Aro Ace. And it's basically set in this fantasy world where there is the ability to dream walk and go into people's dreams. Everybody has their own sphere, their own like inner world kind of a thing. Our main character can dream walk, but she cannot go into her own world. She doesn't seem to have one, or it's very much hidden. Her mother dies in this tragic way, and so to get to the bottom of why that happened and to get revenge, she's basically on a journey journey of self-discovery. I didn't love this. I would say it's a very middle-of-the-road, very meh kind of YA read, like a 2.5 stars. It was serviceable. I liked the representation. I did like the characters, like it had a serviceable story, but it just was kind of lacking in every department. I felt like the first person really hindered the story from going further. The magic system and the world was never really fully explained in detail, so it just was really there to service kind of the author's theme versus like being a really big part of the world. The world especially I felt was really underdeveloped. I was getting like Persian inspired, maybe like 1001 Nights inspired, but it just, the world was never fleshed out in detail so that I could actually imagine like what the characters were wearing, what the world looked like, what kind of setting it was supposed to be. It was obviously supposed to be like fantasy, but like I couldn't tell you where in the world it was supposed to like look like or just really anything. Honestly, this was just kind of a slog to get through. I just felt very middle of the road about it. It was fine. It did what it set to do. I liked certain aspects of it, but a lot of it just felt really underdeveloped, really unfleshed out, and just like the author was so focused on telling this particular story that they forgot like all the bits and pieces that you need to make a compelling story. But it was serviceable. Would recommend it, but just not for me personally. The next book I read was The Time I Got Drunk and Saved a Demon. This is like a solid 3 out of 5 romantasy read. It looks really short, but it's even shorter than this, I promise, because the text is very big. And this basically, to me, read like a Percy Jackson kid grew up and decided that they wanted to write smutty romance. It has like the humor, the wit that you would kind of expect out of that kind of person. This is about our main character called Cinnamon. She is a spice trader, a spice farmer with her family, and she basically just doesn't want to be the main character. In this world, people are chosen to be heroes to fight back demons. She wants nothing to do with that. She just wants to live her life, but she makes the ultimate anime mistake of dyeing her hair pink for the festivities, and of course that, at least she thinks, that does not help her case. She runs into this demon that's escaped, and he tells her some stuff about her world, and she decides, hey, I guess we have to go do this mission now. It's silly, it's over the top, it's anachronistic, but because of the author's tone and just like the way she wrote the characters, it really fit into the world. But if you read the first couple pages of this and you don't gel with narration, if you don't gel with the tone, you're not gonna like this. It is very much straight to the point, in your face, what it's going to be. But I found it really fun because all these things that I wouldn't like in a typical fantasy, like it set itself up with that tone to just be silly, over the top, goofy. It just worked for me. But it is not all of fun, goofy time. There are some trigger warnings that the author notes at the beginning of this book. So if you're planning to read it, I would definitely look into that. It was a good time. It was serviceable. It was fun. It was a great way to break up some of the rest of my reading. And the final book I read for the readathon was Artificial Condition by Martha Wells. This is the second book in the Murderbot diaries. And basically, in the first book, Murderbot is this sentient being who has unyoked himself from his government control, his company's control. All that they want to do is watch the little soap operas and not have to actually do their job. But of course, things start to go wrong and they have to do more than their job. They have to save these people. And Murderbot does not want to be attached to people. They do not want to work with them. They don't want to be involved. They don't want to be emotionally connected. And it causes a lot of problems. This second book was a lot of fun because it's Murderbot interacting with other sentient, robotic technology kind of beings and kind of going over how to appear human and stuff. So there's like this silly, like, two kids in a trench coat type situation, but it's sci-fi, it's fun. I just really fell for Murderbot. I really connect to him. I like what this story is doing, and I'm excited to see where it goes from here. This was Murderbot trying to uncover some things about their own past. I will say this is like a 3.75 stars out of me, where the first book was a 4. I find that when we get to the climax of these books, it just happens really, really fast, where I'm like, okay, what was going on? Which makes sense because it is such a small book, but it feels like the first 80% of this book is a little bit slower, which I don't mind. I enjoy because I like Murderbot so much, but I wish the climax was a little bit more spread out, a little bit more just to ground ourselves in what's happening so it's not so rushed. But overall, I really, really like the series and can't wait to continue. And then my final book that I read that was not part of the readathon was Blood Witch by Susan Dennard. This is the third book in the Witchland series. I have a lot of thoughts on this series. I want to read the fourth book so that I can give like an in-depth thing about it, but this is basically a 3 out of 5 stars for me. The first book really wowed me, especially for for the time it came out, what it was doing in the YA fantasy genre. If you don't know, around like 2016, that era, Game of Thrones was really big, and every fantasy book, especially YA, was trying to be Game of Thrones. Multiple perspectives, hard, gritty world, kind of this quest setting or like characters running around, trying to run away from things and coming together. Like those kind of things became really prevalent in especially YA fantasy because of the Game of Thrones popularity, and I feel like this is no exception. So some of the things that make this series great are what it is implementing from that, but some of the things that I particularly don't like, I feel like are also reflected from what I don't like from Game of Thrones. It's definitely better than the second book, but it was not as good as the first, and definitely my hype around this series, my initial amazement at the first book just really went downhill. This series is basically about two young girls who are both witches in this fantasy world. They have different powers. One is a truth witch, so she can see when people are telling the truth and when they're not, and our other is a thread witch, which means she can see like the threads of fate, she can see the threads of emotion between people, and because of one heist that goes poorly, they kind of end up in this political situation where they are pulled apart and thrown in with different characters. They're running around all these different countries that are on the brink of war with each other. They're just stuck in this plot and kind of being at the mercies of not just grown-ups but like bigger beings than themselves. And what I love about this series is that the characters are complex. I love all the perspectives. Like I actually like all those characters that get perspectives. I'm intrigued by what's happening to them, and Susan Dennard just has a way of writing. She has a very elegant prose style, and just her character work is really spot on. Like these characters, again, feel complex, they feel fleshed out, they feel really well done, but the plot and the world building of this book is so slow to the point where it's dragging. It really is dragging. Again, a lot of the plot is characters like running away from things, being set apart from each other and trying to get back together. A lot of like running around, walking places, and there are no time skips. You are not skipping an instant of any of that kind of travel because the book is basically spent with these characters who are on the run from things. And for me, that is a downfall because I need some more plot stuff to happen. Finally, it felt like some more stuff was happening in this third book. Again, in the first two books, we got some battles and stuff that was going on, and there was definitely more of that in here, but battles they don't feel significant to the story because I don't know what's going on. These characters don't know what's happening. They don't know the plot that these adults and these celestial godlike beings have like put them into. So they're kind of running around without purpose and getting set into these fights and challenges without purpose because they don't know what they're doing. And on top of that, the world building is just non-existent. I don't understand how the magic works. And if you don't want to explain a magic system and have like a softer, looser magic system, that's fine. But like I need something. I need more lore. I need more explanation. I need more details. I could not tell you what this fantasy world is supposed to look like, what each country is supposed to look like, what the clothing is supposed to look like. It's like generic to the point where like nothing has an image in my brain. This whole thing is built around like the idea of the Carlwen, which are these powerful human beings with magical powers, and there's obviously like gods in this world, and there's different systems set up, like there's a whole monk priest situation, but like none of those things are really put into detail. The countries are not distinct from themselves. Again, the lore is not built up. I feel like we could have been going over like gods, just like mythology and just all this stuff. Character work is beautiful, but so much time is spent on the internalness of the characters and what they're thinking and what they're going through that we just get nothing else. And again, it's to the point where it's really dragging, and it's like, ugh, it feels like I'm pulling teeth when I'm reading this series, because as much as I love the characters, I need some more about the world. I finally felt like we got some stuff, but like at this point, it's like this should have been the end of the first book, maybe the end of the second book, you know? I'm okay going through that first book of not knowing things, getting the world open up to us. The second book, I should have some questions answered, and those should open up more questions for me. But I should know how the world works, I should know how it looks, and by the third book, we should be getting into like more heavy plot stuff. We should be getting into the main action of the series. At this point, I don't know what they need to do. Do they need to rejuvenate the world or save it from something? I don't know. Save it from something. It's just very vague. That's what it feels like. It feels like the plot is very vague and distant. It feels like the world is very vague. Characters spot on, but like as someone who loves characters first, needs character work for everything else to work, I've never felt in my life like, damn, I am a setting person, I guess. I am a world building person. I really need those details or else I'm gonna be bored. And I guess that is, you know, it is something that I need and want. But so this was better than the second book, but it was so long. It's an 18-hour audiobook and it felt like it. But yeah, those are all the books that I read in the month of April. Nothing great because I didn't even get a 4-star this time around, unless you're talking about manga. But I'm glad I read what I did because a lot of this was on my TBR, so I've been meaning to get to a lot of this, and I'm excited to see what the next months hold for us. But thank you so much for watching. I'll see you guys later, and happy reading!